All right, I'm back. How the fuck do we do this thing again? I forgot.
Well, usually we say hello, but we've already been hanging out here for a little bit. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, also, I originally came here to pick up my dog, so if you hear excited dog movement, it's because he hasn't seen me in a week.
yeah, I guess what is he doing now? Napping?
He's actually passed out on the floor, so I think we're good.
All right, good. He doesn't want to hear what we're talking about today, I guess.
He's like, no, thank you.
Speaking of which, we want to just dive into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite thing.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I guess it's not really.
I hope
guess
not.
Everyone hates it. Lots of people hate it. Some people love it. It's fascism.
Okay, well, I got a spoiler because I'm like looking over your shoulder at like whatever Wikipedia thing you have open. I do see a subtitle called Catholic Church, which is concerning to me.
Yeah, it depends on the context as to the relationship between religion and
Okay.
fascism, but sometimes they play nice with each other.
I don't like that.
Well, it's bad, so that's why. But yeah, no, that's specifically about referring to Italy.
Okay.
They're going to be a big topic here.
Okay, great. I mean, not great, again. Okay, can we play Christine Makes Wild Guesses?
Yes, we can always do that.
Okay, great. That's like the theme of the show. I'm going to give what I think the definition is, and then you tell me the definition?
Yeah, sort of, yeah. I can't tell you the definition. I can give you kind of my ideas on it.
Okay, there's not like one big definition?
No, it's very hard to say. Ian Kershaw, who's like a preeminent historian of Nazi Germany, says trying to define fascism is like trying to nail jelly to a wall.
Ooh, yeah.
That's
visceral.
And there's just a lot of different takes on it. And so my own take is kind of a fusion of different things. So I don't purport to tell you, yeah, you got it right, or no, you got it wrong.
Okay.
But I'm interested to hear your side.
All right, here's what I know about fascism. Usually involves like a dictator kind of situation.
Okay.
The government is like in control of everything. Mm-hmm. And they usually are very mean and racist and like doing war, I think.
Okay, yeah. It's a good...
That's a really basic answer. I wanted to cover as much as possible.
I think that, yeah, that covers a lot of the basis that I've got here.
Okay.
So, yeah. I did a bunch of reading on this and got like a bunch, kind of cobbled together from, various Wikipedia articles and other sources and whatnot, kind of some of the characteristics of it, shall we say.
Grady's rules for fascism.
Yeah, lists of qualities, basically. So one is it's hyper-nationalist. All right? So it's just super nationalist. Our country or our people are superior.
Yeah.
Is kind of the context there. It tends to see the current state of things as degenerate in some way.
So they're like kind of reactionary.
Yeah, they kind of want the nation to have some sort of a rebirth.
Yeah. Good old days kind of thing.
Maybe the good old days, but like beyond that even.
Okay.
If you have some sort of founding myth or some sort of glorious past to look at, not just like, 50 years ago or whatever, sometimes maybe, but not just like back when we were kids or something, but like, the heroic days.
Okay,
or sort of building on that, and more than just restoring that. Like, obviously people don't want to go to the medieval times or something. More than just restoring that, it's like building a brave new world or whatever, but on those old values.
Okay.
And one of the big things that they think about that degeneration or that decadence is that it's due to like the nefarious actions of your enemies and the like kind of stupid or clumsy allowing of those enemies to do that by the people currently in power.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of like Nazi Germany had the whole degenerate art show, and they paired that very closely with like obviously anti-Semitism. And then there was also lots of talk about like degenerates in terms of like, why are there gay people? Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. The degenerate art show. Did they just like actually show the art?
Yeah. So it's really funny. I don't know the story perfectly, so pardon me if I get it wrong. But from what I recall, they were like, let's do an art show to make fun of all this terrible art. And then it was like the coolest art show ever.
Yeah.
They tried to make it really bad. They like packed the walls, so it was like a really uncomfortable like space, you know, like they didn't give anything its own breathing room or anything like that.
It wasn't a nice art gallery, but it was just like there.
Like they tried to do a bad job, but then it was like, well, you actually got all the coolest artists together, so like this is fucking cool.
All the hipsters show up like, damn, this is cool, bro.
This is awesome.
The government let us in for free. I think it's interesting. Most of the time when you see fascism, its enemies are, they kind of share common enemies. Communists.
Yeah,
or
we're always
socialists.
against those.
Yeah. They're kind of like the chief antagonists, the barbarians at the gate coming to destroy civilization. I mean, that's what they think. You know, right? Yeah. So they say these communists, these socialists, they are the reason. They're actively trying to subvert everything, right?
Okay.
Then you have liberals. And this is not like American liberal, but just like anyone in like bourgeois democracies.
Okay.
Right? Like classical liberals too. So anybody who's like pro-parliamentarian stuff or like pro-democracy, things like that, they see these guys as like the idealistic losers who weakened society enough to get to this dangerous point.
Okay, so like fascism doesn't fuck with democracy pretty much at all?
Right. It does not like democracy.
Yeah.
Conservatives and monarchists, they don't really like them either. Because these people, you know, their fault was giving up enough ground to the liberals to let them give society away to the communists.
Okay, so they see them as like weak to have lost power in the first place?
Right, yeah. They should have quashed this stuff when they had the chance. But now they're kind of like old, you know, aristocratic foppishness or whatever. Like they can't be saved. They can be used. Maybe you can ally with them, but they're not where it's at anymore.
Okay.
We're past that. You also have a category of like, you were saying with degenerate, like people even, or how they would categorize it as, the Nazis would use this phrase anyway, useless eaters.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Gonna start calling my cats that.
Hey, and you know, honestly, we're like pro useless eaters, like be a useless eater.
Yeah.
You don't have to have any value to anyone but yourself. You know?
It's just such a harsh wording.
Yeah, these guys are, well, you know, because they suck. They categorize us as people with disabilities, obviously.
Jesus.
People who are too old to work, but also things we might agree with, like rentiers, like, you know, people like landlords essentially, or speculators, people who aren't like doing anything in the economy.
Yeah.
You know, they said these guys are just kind of leeching. You know, the Nazis would introduce, you know, that would kind of bleed into their anti-Semitic, global banking conspiracy thing. But it wasn't like, that's not, the Nazi anti-Semitism part is more unique to them. It's not universal. But there oftentimes is sort of an inferior race thing involved in some way. Yeah. It's not always at the heart of it, I found, especially like if you look at the Italian thing, it's kind of like almost added on later.
Oh yeah, we forgot to be racist.
Yeah, and especially with like, they don't do any anti-Semitic laws until later. Once the Germans are like, once Nazi Germany is in charge, basically, and then they're like, okay, well, fine.
Okay, yeah.
They kind of go along with it. I mean, it's still bad.
Yeah, very bad.
But it's not. It wasn't like their idea. I guess.
Interesting. Okay.
But usually, especially modern times, some sort of extreme racism is there.
Definitely,
in the mix, like neo-fascists or whatever. So those are all the like enemies on the enemies list. So tag yourself. We're the communists and the degenerates.
Yeah, for sure. I am a communist degenerate. New Instagram handle.
And it's summer vacation now, so I'm definitely in the useless eaters category.
Same here. Just been on vacation for over a week.
And inferior races. We check a lot of boxes here.
Great. Good job.
So fascism, one other thing about it is it tries to position itself as in the third position.
Okay.
So it's saying that we're neither left nor right. We're above that. They don't mean like
off.
They're not like trying to do centrism.
Okay, yeah.
Which it sounds, you know, to our ears, that's what it sounds like.
It does.
But they're trying to say like, no, we do a little of each one, and we're like kind of beyond that. In saying that, well, some of the things that they want, like you said, a dictatorship, some form or fashion, a totalitarian government, so super strong government that protects the nation from it's from threats, external, other countries, or internal, all those list of enemies we were saying.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So if we picture our classic political quadrant chart,
Yeah.
are they on there?
Yeah, so it depends on who you ask, I guess. The orthodox interpretation of, like, if you look at political compass beams or whatever, right, they're going to be off-center, which is up at the top of the graph in the middle.
Okay.
Between the left and the right, so they get that part, and then they're square in the middle. That's where people tend to put, like, the Nazis or whatever.
Okay.
And you can kind of argue that. I would kind of push them further right and say that they talk a big game about, socialism and stuff like that. And sometimes they do a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But the way they do that is super, racist. And super, like, it's still in support of, like, the nation state more so than the people, that it doesn't, to me, equate like leftism.
Yeah, because if you think about, like, true socialism, if you're actually providing for people, that means all the people. You don't get to pick which ones. And then also, if you think about the opposite of that, if their main focus is supporting the state, like we know as people who have done our anarchist reading, like the state is imperialist and racist and, like, very bad.
Yeah, and it's in the interest of private property. Like, and these guys really aren't against that. Basically, they want capitalism to still be there, but, like, under the control, under the guidance of the government. Like, you can't go doing your big corporation thing in a way that screws over the state.
Government. So you still have to pay your taxes and shit.
Right. And, like, if we're in a war, you have to stop doing whatever and you have to start making tanks or whatnot. You have to channel your desire to make profits. That has to be secondary to the national interest. But I mean, they're still fine with, like, these huge titans of industry. And in terms of society, like, if we get into the socialism aspect of, like,
do they provide for their people?
Well, not just that, because they will provide for their people, like, if you meet the qualification.
If you're white.
The people, right? Especially in the Nazi sense. They had, social services and whatever, but you had to, like, be Aryan. But their view of society is they see the nation state as this organic whole entity. We're all a family here and nationalize that.
Okay.
Like, that's kind of how they see it.
Because, a lot of them do have, like, father metaphors, right?
Yes, like fatherland and things like that's, they believe in the inherent inequality of people. And so, therefore, they think, there should be stations in life. These classes, they should exist. There should be superiors and inferiors. And they should not be struggling. Like, they don't deny that there are classes, but they
want to lean into that?
Yeah, they support class collaboration. So they say employers and employees, they shouldn't fight against each other. They should work together for the good of the nation.
Okay.
Right?
I mean, that makes sense if you think about it. If you have a group of people that, like, hate people with disabilities or, like, people of different races, like, they think those traits about people are, like, inherent.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, they can never, change or provide or do whatever they want them to do. People cannot change, or people are who they are or who they look like.
Yeah, it's determined already.
Yeah.
So, and, getting back to how this is definitely not socialist, even when they try to say, oh, we're the National Socialist Party or whatever.
Bad branding for us, honestly. We should have sued them for libel.
Well, it's terrible, yeah. And people always like to throw that out there. Your right-wing types. They're like, well, don't you see it? It's there in the name. And you're like, well, they didn't, they're not actually doing it. Yeah, because we don't want classes to collaborate, because we understand that what they actually mean is get back to work harder. Like, when they're saying, oh, we're all going to work together, that just means the working class is going to get crushed into subservience.
Yeah, it's not working together. It's working for somebody.
Yeah. And then you also mentioned, right, they want to conquer, or they want to expand, right? Dominate as much as possible. They have this idea of, like, the will to power. They kind of see everything as, like, a law of the jungle, might makes right.
Okay. Do like, all of them, like, try to expand and shit, or are there isolationist examples?
I guess it does depend on the context. Neo-fascists especially don't always lean on that. They're not always like, let's go conquer the world. That was more of a initial fascist party guys did that. but they are, in terms of like being super pro their country, super pro nationalists, when they see an opportunity to, that expansion would be a good thing, they don't say, oh no, but we shouldn't take over a country because that's mean, or because that breaks the laws. They don't care. They would be like, oh, this is good. Do it.
Quick aside, do you remember this painting from one of our history episodes?
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah, so...
The fast dog.
Yeah, fast dog. It's called Dynamism of a Dog. And I don't know. This is just a plug, I guess, for taking an art history class, because what's great about that is you learn to associate different art movements with different periods in history. And that's a fascist dog, because that dog is an example of futurism, which is obsessed with building on the future and like movement and industry and
violence.
Yeah, like chaos and violence and whatever means necessary. So anyway,
that's good.
Fascist dog.
They will be mentioned. The futurists.
Okay, great.
All right, so that's sort of my categories, or like not categories. That's sort of my
easy tips for fascism.
Yeah. What to look for.
How to spot a fascist.
You might be a fascist if. But yeah, those are kind of the characteristics. That's the word.
There you go. You got it. It's been a week, guys. We're out of practice.
All right. How did we come up with something so stupid?
Yeah, where'd it come from? I mean, that's why I started thinking about fascist dogs. I'm like, well, when did this show up? Probably around that time, maybe a little bit earlier.
Yeah, its roots are super complex to kind of do too deep of a dive on. Like, we don't really want to get all the way into it.
I also know that, like, in ancient Rome, they had the fasci, right? The big bundle of sticks that's still on all of our shit. It's totally cool and chill.
It's, so like everybody was like, swastika, you can't do that anymore. But the fascist symbol, like...
That's fine.
The symbol of the origins of fascism, that one's still okay for some reason.
That's cool.
That's an interesting story. So yeah, in ancient Rome, they had these like traveling kind of Judge Dredd type figures that would carry around a fasces.
Just a big bundle of sticks.
Yeah, and so you could use that to like lash people, and then you could use like the axe part of it to execute people.
Okay, so I've never actually inspected these too closely. Is it like you just hit them with the whole bundle, or do you take out sticks? No, I think
you would take out sticks. Okay. And then, so, if you break it on somebody's back or whatever, you have more sticks.
That's insane.
Yeah, well, it's ancient Rome. So.
Yeah, rough times.
But that's kind of where that comes from. That's where you get the term fascist is from that. And the symbolism of the bundled sticks is like this whole strength and unity idea.
Which sounds cute, but it's not.
Right. It's dark side that.
Yeah.
Like, it's dark side solidarity.
Yeah. Dark side solidarity. That's just imperialism.
Okay, so the origins. Like we said, too many, and you can't really get into like historical precedents of it because it's like, well, like the Roman Empire. Like, you can go really too far back. And historians can point to a lot of proto-fascist kind of governments, but we're just going to go like, okay.
Modern.
Yeah. The origins of like the first fascist party and maybe how that spreads to other places, but not too much on that. Basically, where did it come from? What ideas went into the vile mixing pot that births this? Okay?
How many drinks did they have?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to bring up is something called fin de siècle.
Okay. What is that?
It's French.
French.
That was.
Let me see it. I want to try.
Okay.
I've been reading a lot of Poirot. Fin de siècle.
All right.
I guess.
All right. Probably more correct than me.
I don't know. You just sound dramatic. That's my secret.
All right. This was an intellectual or literary movement.
End of sickles.
End of the cycle, yeah. So it's actually the end of the 19th century.
Okay.
Almost like millenarian sort of thing of like the world's about to change, right? It's kind of a feeling or even an artistic sort of movement too.
Yeah, I think I've heard of this.
It was a big revolt against like materialism, rationalism, democracy.
All the Enlightenment shit?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were like, this is messed up, or this has kind of degraded society.
Okay.
Bourgeois society has become decadent. It's crumbling into oblivion. Shit is getting really, really bad, and eventually we're going to need to make a clean break, make some big, bold restructuring of everything.
Great.
It's not openly fascist, really, and it's not even that bad of an idea.
It's not. I think they just went, they saw the problem and then went the wrong way.
Yeah, or it kind of plants some of the wrong seeds for people. Some people, like, I don't think that idea is really inherently bad, but it gets people more willing to jettison things that might have some good to them, like democracy, like you don't like go
throw out everything,
right? Like, and that's not to say bourgeois democracy is what we want, but like build on it rather than destroy, destroy it and go backward. So that's one. Another one is social Darwinism.
Oh, I don't like that.
No, what's social Darwinism?
That's whenever you're like fucking survival of the fittest, like your place is deserved, that kind of shit.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's
just a perversion of Darwin's, that came out in 1859, Origin of Species.
Yeah.
So we're still in that kind of time, that late 19th century. Survival of the fittest kind of transposed onto the whole world ends up being like, well, nations have sort of a survival of the fittest too. Your strongest nations are going to dominate, and it kind of feeds into the overall nationalist.
Yeah, and like eugenics too, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. That's another thing. I didn't really trace the history of like eugenics and shit. It's a whole. We can do an episode on that. I'm just going to kind of toss that in once the Nazis get on the stage. They're the ones that run with that.
Okay.
But yeah, like you said, people deserve their station or their class. It's very anti-egalitarian.
Okay.
Another intellectual idea around this time, late 1800s, early 1900s, is something called integral nationalism.
Okay.
Which was French. This guy, Charles Moreau, or Maurras, I don't know how to say his name, was this French reactionary guy. He was monarchist even. But he was super nationalist, and the thing that fascism gets from him is this idea of the organic unity of a nation sort of thing under a powerful leader. His was a monarch. They're gonna say, well, don't want monarchy, but they do want,
strong guy,
a strong guy at the top. Yeah, guy.
Take care of me, Dad.
Yeah, but he was one who kind of says like the nation's a family, and we all have roles to play and that sort of thing.
Okay.
There's also a kind of weird syndicalist element.
Really?
Yeah, so
I like those usually.
Yeah, and this very strange guy, Georges Sorel, was sort of responsible for this kind of weird syndicalist angle.
Okay.
He was originally a good kind of, syndicalist, general strike sort of guy.
Yeah.
And he kind of goes to the right wing for a while and says, like, revolutionary, like anarchist syndicalism and all that, maybe it's not gonna work. Maybe we need like a sort of a political religion, a revolutionary political religion, some sort of ideal or something to kind of zealously drive us forward to get shit done.
It's almost like Dark Side Vanguard Party.
Yeah, in a way. And he kind of tries to blend this with Charles Maurras's nationalism, and says like maybe we should go for the nation state, like maybe that's what we should do, kind of do this strong leader thing. He eventually realizes that's stupid, and becomes like a supporter of the Bolsheviks. And stuff
Good.
By the end of his life. So a real roller coaster, that guy.
Yeah, geez, he just went on a bender for 2 weeks and then was like, what happened? What did I write? Oh no, I made a pamphlet.
Okay, you ever do that? You wake up and you've written a terrible pamphlet. And
no, did I post that?
How many people saw that?
Okay, but like that is a wild turn. Like we're joking, but like I understand again the impulse to say like, well, this is too slow. We need like something strong to cut through it. Mm-hmm. But then to put that power in nationalism, which has historically not been a great place to find equality, that's rough.
Well, yeah, in modern times, it's easier to see that, maybe.
Yeah,
Nationalism was just sort of getting its heyday.
That's true, because, like, if you think back to, like, a lot of... Sorry, I guess I'm slightly buzzed because I keep making these artistic connections. If you think back to, like, a lot of the great composers, they were, like, super nationalists. Like, Chopin and all that, he was like, I'm going to go back to, like, Polish folk music. Fuck yeah.
Yeah,
that was the hot thing to do.
True, yeah.
I don't know if it was Polish. It might have been Czech. Please don't at me.
Speaking of which, I'm going to get a drink.
Get a drink. Yeah, join me.
Yeah, I got to. All right, so we just finished with George Sorel, right?
Yeah.
George's, not George.
I thought if it's French, you go Georges. But
Probably.
I don't know.
Probably.
Again, I am just taking
Be
this
dramatic.
from Poirot.
All right, next up is the Italian Nationalist Association.
Okay. Sounds
These
bad.
guys, they rejected bourgeois values, which
That sounds good, but
what they mean is democracy,
that's bad. Okay.
liberalism, pacifism, internationalism, and of course, everyone's favorite, Marxism.
Oh, interesting.
So they were like, no, Marxism sucks. All these things suck. They saw humans as naturally predatory. So that sort of social Darwinism, struggle of nations, survival of the fittest sort of thing. They promoted heroism, vitalism, and violence.
Sorry, what?
They wanted everyone to be an action hero. Everybody is the
everyone's going to
Avengers
CrossFit.
now.
Yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah, they were kind of wild in that sense.
Did they only eat raw meat and shit like that?
eat what is it? Eat raw meat and get buff, and eat raw meat and get buff.
That's Lenin's rules.
Yeah, Lenin. So maybe he, came across some of this. I don't know.
That's cool.
But they also saw nations as like organic entities. They also introduced this idea of like seeing entire nations as either proletarian or bourgeois, which is stupid.
That is stupid.
Because you have different classes in the nations.
Yeah.
But they were like, no. So
That's
Italy,
totally, though, how a lot of people think the world works. Those good guy, bad guy countries.
Right, yeah. Everybody's on the same team somehow in that country. It's like, dude.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. So, they were like, Italy, proletarian nation, we're cool, and we're common folk and we're good. And then you have these bad plutocratic nations like France and Britain, they're bad.
I mean, they are bad, but not for
everyone
that.
there is just bad. Yeah.
Everyone there. Oh.
That was good. And then you have futurism. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
This art movement that you know more about.
I don't know.
What's the art side of it?
The art side was really trying to capture movement in painting, mostly, also sculpture. So there's also this kick-ass bronze statue of like a guy, and it looks like he's like whooshing behind him. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
It's cool.
Yeah.
But it also is fashy. It's the idea of moving forward at all costs, I think would be a good way to put it.
This is for readers, for listeners who want more information on this. We covered this in, was it the Russian Constructivist?
It was, because it eventually influenced it, for sure.
All right. Aside from the art side of it, there was also a guy named Filippo Tommaso Marinetti, who wrote something called the Manifesto of Futurism, which kind of, which did explicitly glorify violence and war. They also kind of, in him specifically, he later goes on to author the Fascist Manifesto. He becomes just a straight up fascist. And there's it's not the entire art movement, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
But there were elements of the art movement. Some people went in a fascist direction eventually.
For sure. And I think, too, a lot of it was about using this new industrial strength to empower your country or whatever. To take over shit.
Yeah, and they kind of, some of these guys who did that wanted to change education and teach boys more how to be soldiers more so than scholars or whatever. They were all about let's go do this big war thing, which is kind of crazy to think about.
That is nuts. Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is a really big question.
All right.
Okay. Easy. Yeah, get the wine. So, there's a lot of Italians in this. What's the historical context behind that? Why are they feeling we're all poor and we need to fight for something better? What was going on then that made that happen?
The construction of Italy in the first place.
Okay.
The unification of it was a fairly modern. That was in the 1800s.
That's really late.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you had different kingdoms or whatnot, but you didn't have Italy itself as a nation state till then. And
wow.
So they're very much on the forefront of the rise of nationalism and things. Is that had just happened essentially.
Okay.
They along with the other nations of Europe were kind of doing this nationalism thing of we want to kind of bite and claw for our stake. There was the big scramble for Africa in terms of brutal colonization and imperialism, but there was also just a geopolitical contest, who's the biggest kid on the playground kind of brewing leading up to World War I.
Yeah.
I think that's the main part of it, is that
They had just gotten together, so they're like, all right, we got to stay together.
And they're kind of forging their national identity. What are we going to be? Like, what does it mean to be Italian? That sort of thing. Other countries were experiencing that too, but I think we're going to find, especially that World War I is going to play the big role.
For sure.
In kicking all this off.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So, all those bad ideas. Well, I mean, even the futurists, that's not all bad. The art stuff was cool.
Some of it was cool.
Yeah. And,
most of it was bad.
Yeah, most of that stuff we just talked about, not great. Fin de Siècle, that was okay.
Yeah.
But all that bruise, and eventually we're going to see the rise of the first real fascist party, which is, I guess, who we'll focus on.
Okay.
As far as the origin story, in Italy. World War I, friend of the show, causes a big split in the socialist parties all over the world. We talked about that, right?
Yeah, every fucking time with those wars.
In Italy, same thing. The Italian Socialist Party, they actually stay opposed to the war.
Okay, good job.
And they kick out members who support the war, some of them did.
Do those turn fascist?
Yeah.
No, come on, guys.
Including, the up until that point, dedicated socialist, Benito Mussolini.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Benito Mussolini, interesting. I hadn't really read about this guy before. A little bit,
Yeah.
but I hadn't really dove deeply into it. But this guy his father was an out and out socialist. Huh. He was named like Benito, and I forget his middle two names, but like Benito after Benito Juarez in Mexico.
Okay, yeah, because I love the name Benito because I associate with Benito Juarez, and I always want to name things that, and I'm like, well, people are gonna think it's the other one.
Yeah, so he's kind of an asshole for ruining it.
Yeah, what the fuck?
But his other two middle names are like after Italian socialists. He grew up, initially his first forays into politics were as a socialist. He was getting jailed for that shit.
What the fuck?
Yeah, no, I mean, he even apparently was introduced to Lenin at some point. And then Lenin later is like writing to the Italian communists, like, how the fuck did you guys lose Mussolini? What the fuck? That guy was on our side.
What the fuck?
But I don't want to be too great man about it,
Yeah.
You understand. If it hadn't have been him, it would have been somebody else.
For sure.
But World War I, we said it was caused by rising nationalism, and it fuels even more nationalism. Like, in the lead up to that, and once it first breaks out, everybody's going crazy. They're like, damn, man, like, let's do whatever we can. We shouldn't say everybody, obviously. There were anti-war activists, but lots of people were like, let's jump on board. Yeah. It's like when, you see the outbreak in Ukraine and everything, or back when there was the invasion of Iraq, like any of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
People get super nationalist and super like, let's go, America, That's what they were doing.
Yeah.
Even socialists like Mussolini got caught up in this.
Mm-hmm.
And so he basically abandons, and, people like him, they abandon the idea of class struggle and socialism altogether.
What the fuck?
Their new ideal, their new cause is the nation. Like they see that as more important than anything. It's the principle of organizing humans at that point is the nation state.
Wow. Okay.
So freshly drummed out of the Socialist Party because he was pro-war, Mussolini and some other kind of assholes formed something called the Fascio d'Azione Rivoluzionaria.
Okay. Fascist action?
Yeah, the Fascis, or League of Revolutionary Action.
There we go.
Yeah. That was in 1915. This eventually becomes the National Fascist Party in Italy. There is kind of a funny, embarrassing side note here. Mussolini was, of course, like getting money from arms companies because he's like pro-war, trying to get Italy into the war.
Yeah.
So they're like, yes, please do that. They're giving him money.
Great.
He was also apparently getting funded from pro-war French socialists who wanted Italy to join, the war on France's side.
Okay.
Which they eventually do, but they really get a bad payback in World War II for that.
That's rough.
Yeah, not a good one. Anyway, these were the first kind of real fascist party that we have. Their big thing, so they were pretty like poorly organized at first. didn't have a big set of beliefs. They were just like, super...
Just some war guys.
Yeah. War guys. They didn't like, socialist internationalism sort of thing.
Okay.
They were a fairly small group. I couldn't find like the exact numbers, just that they were small.
Okay.
So they go out trying to recruit, trying to organize out in the streets. That's what you did. You could pamphlet and you could
Pamphlet
go
your
out in the
way into
streets.
power.
Yeah. The socialists went out and basically bullied these guys.
Fuck yeah.
They just picked fights. Both sides were fighting in the streets. And this kind of really, because at first it's sort of almost a factional thing, right? But like this kind of pushes Mussolini and the fascist group to be, less socialist, drop all that shit that they used to believe in fast.
Completely.
And they're just like, no, we're going to be right wing now, basically.
Yeah.
Eventually, they kind of reform into the Fasci Italiani di Combattimento,
Okay.
which is the Italian fighting bands,
Woof.
which is like the combat bands, basically.
Okay.
That's in 1919, and by this point, they just become like right-wing street fighters.
Okay, like just a paramilitary group, basically.
Yeah, / political activists. Like they're also like running in elections and stuff. So you can go vote for your local street fighter, I guess. But by this point, they're out there saying, Italy should try to conquer. They called it Spazio Vitale, or vital or living space, which later the Germans would call Lebensraum, the living space, which is what they tried to conquer in Eastern Europe and stuff to wipe out the people that were there and bring in Germans.
Woof.
Kind of like a rehash of Manifest Destiny in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
The Italians were saying sort of the same thing. They were like saying we should take this over from inferior cultures.
Woof.
It was less of a biological race thing for them and more just like nations or groups of people. They were like, these guys, they don't have it together. We're better as a country than them.
Mm-hmm. We have better ideas or whatever.
Yeah, so their targets were like in Yugoslavia, in that area, and in Africa.
Okay.
The fascists formed a group called the Squadrismo, which was a fascist militia, basically, that would eventually morph into the Black Shirts, which was their like stormtrooper guys.
Okay, yeah.
And of course, they went around fighting socialists in the streets.
Of course.
Now, the interesting thing about that tactic, and one of the important ways that the fascists rose to power, is that they're going out there starting and provoking these fights, right?
Yeah.
They're going out there saying, "Hey, there's a socialist. Let's get him."
Get him.
And the socialists were like fighting back and trying to stop these guys from, exterminating them and stuff.
Who got blamed?
Well, yeah, that's the thing is the government doesn't really do anything to stop it.
Okay.
The government is like sitting back, watching basically, because they're kind of weak, and so it lowers their credibility. More people start turning to, hey, I'm going to join with the socialists or with the fascists or whatever, and the government eventually is scared. Who are they scared of? Not the fascists. They are scared of this kind of rising leftist tide because they see kind of whose interests, are served.
Yeah.
There's especially an interesting time period, 1919 and 1920, called the Biennio Russo, the 2 red years.
Yeah.
Which is like a wave of revolutionary strikes and factory occupations throughout Italy.
Whoa.
That terrifies the shit out of the government.
So do they side with the fascists?
So they say, yeah, these fascists who have essentially provoked the situation to begin with, they're the cause of the street violence. Can you guys please help protect us? Defend law and order for us, please. Even though, again, they're the main instigators of the violence. Yeah, so I don't know. I find that an interesting...
That is really interesting. Oh, that is icky.
Of course, law and order is only important in so much as it protects, the interest of capital. That's what they're after.
For sure.
But the fascists reform from their little combat bands to be the National Fascist Party.
Okay, now backed by the government.
They kind of had the support of the government. They were like armed thugs for a while, but they weren't in power yet.
Okay.
In the 1921 elections, they win a few seats because they form a formal political alliance with the conservatives.
Okay.
And then at that point, they're still doing their street violence stuff, and nothing's happening to them.
Okay, they can just get away with it all.
Yeah, and so they're like, why don't we just do a coup? Just like take power.
No one will fight against us.
Right, yeah, what is this government going to do? So they just do that. It's called the March on Rome. It sounds very dramatic.
It really does.
But it's essentially like a PR sort of thing. Like they do have 30,000 guys.
That's a lot of guys.
Do like a march, a demonstration, seizing key points from nobody. Nobody's like fighting them. And Mussolini like takes some pictures with them, but then he just goes and like hides in his little base to communicate, send telegrams or whatever to the government to get him to give him power, basically.
Classy.
Yeah, but he takes some like frowny pictures. He tries to look cool with them.
Yeah.
Classic Il Duce behavior there.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, they do a demonstration and just say like, hey, we want to take over. And the government, like the liberals and whatnot, they're like, they go ask the king, Victor Emmanuel III, they say, hey, can we declare martial law? The fascists are trying to take over. And he says, no, we're not going to do that.
Oh my God. For having to go ask the king, like, hey, I know someone's trying, like, at the door trying to take over. Can we do something about it or no?
He's like, nah, we can't.
No,
Sorry.
I'm good.
And the prime minister resigned because he was like, well, I'm not just going to sit here and get taken over. Yeah. And so the king says, okay, well, I'm going to make Mussolini prime minister.
What the fuck?
He just gives power to him. The fascists are able to form kind of a minority government, but then quickly from there, they start changing all the laws and consolidating power and becoming like a one-party state.
That sounds horrifyingly familiar. Yeah.
Well, this is 30,000 guys. I mean, this is a
lot of
real
guys.
organization. They had been doing lots of stuff. I think it's familiar-ish, but I think there are big differences from what we've seen in recent history. January 6th, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm just mean like in terms of just the people who are allowed in Congress in general. Mm-hmm. Like that's a really small party, but like everyone is so scared of appeasing them in their base that they'll do anything for them.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I would say, though, that their supporters or whatever haven't done the sorts of actions that the fascists did to like make people literally scared of them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
it's more of a weird
taking power.
PR scare thing.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how they rose to power. Obviously from there, and their building up of kind of fascist Italy at first, that idea eventually spreads of fascism. The Nazi Party in Germany develops independently, like before, at the same time, sort of, based on this kind of like idea of being wounded or being like, they come up with this anti-Semitic myth of being stabbed in the back as their loss in World War I. They say like, oh, we could have done it, but the November criminals, they said, the traitorous people back home who didn't, support the war effort or whatever, they gave up.
Okay.
And that's kind of part of what fuels it, this kind of like anger and resentment in their veterans ranks and stuff. Fusing that in with the eugenics, anti-Semitic theories and everything, they end up building the Nazi Party. And then when Hitler, who funnily was sent by the government to go monitor and infiltrate this very small Germans Workers' Party, ends up like just getting involved, just like joining.
He's like, oh, I actually like this.
Yeah, he's like, this is cool. And, becomes a member, and then they go on from there to become the Nazi Party.
Okay, but it's a workers' party, but like a bad one.
There were initially branches or like factions within it. They're all bad because they're all racists, right?
Yeah, that's bad.
There's no redeeming that. But there were more like right-wing factions of it and more left-wing factions of it in terms of economics.
Yeah.
And again, they only wanted to apply this to people of the Aryan race or whatever because it sucked. But some of them were more like, hey, let's like, do workers' councils and things like that, and redistributive stuff.
Okay, interesting.
But eventually they dropped that.
Okay.
Once Mussolini comes to power, Hitler actually drew inspiration from that. He
Love
was like,
how you
whoa,
did that.
yeah, he's like, that's cool. Like, what if I do a coup? And he tried that. That's called the Beer Hall Putsch, if you've ever heard of this.
I have.
But it was a failure. Like, they do this crappy attempt at a coup. Hitler gets arrested. Surprise, surprise, he's treated really nice in prison. I wonder why. He's able to write his famous book in there, Mein Kampf, and kind of, hit the ground running after that.
Yeah.
And, we don't have to get into the history of every single fascist party. I just kind of wanted to cover, like, the rise of the first one, maybe.
Yeah,
Its origins.
Yeah, and how it influenced, like, one of the more well-known ones.
Yeah. All right. What's next?
I don't know. You got the doc.
One question I think that often comes to mind as leftists is how to recognize that something is fascist.
Yeah, because I feel like that word gets thrown around a lot. I mean, we talked at the beginning, like, the definition of it is so murky that it's hard to tell exactly when one lines up with that, or if it's just regular old racism, or is racism always fascism, or, like, what exactly... Yeah. Like, I think maybe it's good enough to say, well, this has fascist tendencies, you know, like this aligns with it. So I imagine it's hard to say, like, this is 100% fascist, unless someone's like, I'm a fascist and I wrote this.
Yeah, that's one thing to keep in mind is if someone tells you that they're a fascist...
They're defo a fascist, huh?
Yeah, believe them. Like, not all fascists identify that way. They'll say, oh, I'm not. I'm a nationalist or whatever. Yeah, but everybody who identifies as a fascist is a fascist.
Yeah, take them at their word. Just punch them and leave.
Yeah. Parody. You're right. We toss that term around a lot, and especially once you first learn about fascism, it's like, oh, but okay, so they're the bad guys. They're assholes. They want to control things. So, like, my school must be fascist, or, my boss must be a fascist or whatever. It's like, maybe they're an asshole. Like, maybe they are too bossy or whatever, but it does maybe cheapen the term to kind of overuse it.
Yeah.
You don't really want to be person who cried fascist.
Well, and it also gets turned around to, like, leftist projects as well.
Red fascists.
Yeah, saying, like, well, if fascism is about totalitarianism and dictatorships, like, you gotta look at communism then.
Right, yeah. And they'll make that... And,
Not saying I'm a fan of totalitarianism and dictatorships. But.
Yeah, no, but it's an important point to make. In terms of certain socialist states in history, they have shared characteristics, ideological characteristics and methodological characteristics with fascists. It's not to say that they were fascists because they had different goals, but, having like a vanguard group of, party organization, or having a strong centralized authority or whatever. Like, these are elements that kind of like, you can see the links, okay? But when it comes down to, okay, well, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get all the classes to work together as one big nation. Like, okay.
We're not doing that.
Yeah, that's the opposite. So
yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing about, like, other forms of government too. Like, it's not one characteristic that can make you fascist.
Right, yeah. And I think I liked your idea of, like, fascistic tendencies or elements, maybe. That's a better way to look at it.
Tips for spotting fascism. What you got? Okay. If I'm looking at my Pokédex.
Yeah, we go back to those original characteristics, right? Yeah. So is it super nationalistic? Are they saying, like, we're better than everybody else? We're the best nation, or definitely we're the best race? Like, ugh.
Ooh, yeah.
Or is it saying classes should collaborate? One big happy family. Here we all are working together for the good of whatever country, right? That's and it's not like, I think maybe one way to think of it is like a train. You can get off at stations before you get to fascism. Yeah,
because, I mean, those two things happen all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I can think of that. Nationalism is everywhere in the United States, so, like, that's pretty easy.
Yeah. And a lot of people do. They get off before they get to fascist land. But that's the direction the train is heading.
Yeah, you have to have a few of these, I think.
Yeah. If it's promoting, obviously, like, a superior people or race or ethnicity or language, some, people will say, people should only speak English or whatever. Or, superior nation, any of those sorts of things. When you look at things that are talking about, or policies that are talking about, like, a really not pro-war, because that's kind of over, people realize, oh, this guy wants to conquer stuff, right? But just super pro-militaristic.
Yeah.
Or, like, the military should
have more power, have more resources.
Right. The military should go beyond like a tool for defense.
Should be more aggressive and proactive.
Yeah. Or maybe should even have some sort of a say in how the government works. Like, that's very fascist.
Yeah, that is.
What other things do you think?
This one, I don't think it like is always fascist, but again, fascist tendencies, fascist rising. Just anything that like clamps down on, I would say, individual rights would be pretty fashy to me.
Okay.
It's weird though, because I mean, we've talked about this before. Conservatives in America in general, like, pick and choose their individual rights as needed.
Well, everyone does, I think. I mean,
think
we do too. You know, on the left, we can have wildly different stances, even within the left, on like the right to own a gun.
Yeah.
So which individual rights do you say would be more?
I guess kind of going back to that degenerate idea of what they see as like cultural or religious impurity or things they see as proof of a bad society. I'm thinking trans rights, I'm thinking gay rights, I'm thinking, I mean, those are the two ones that I'm thinking of just because, happy Pride Month, hey everybody. Laws are really bad right now.
Yeah.
So that kind of vibe, I would say. Critical race theory, I think, would fall into that too, of just like, we're not doing any of that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. So rights of expression, rights, individual rights in terms of like how you want to live in the privacy or sometimes.
Yeah, privacy too, I think, would fall under that.
Yeah.
Because you hear a lot of people like totally willing to sell out their privacy in favor of the national government.
Right. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Which, that's one of those elements, right? So you can say, well, okay, in Soviet Russia, they, had problems in terms of protecting people's privacy. Like they didn't, they had a robust surveillance state. And that has happened in other actually existing socialist states. That is like you could say, okay, I get why you do it, but I get why America would do it too. It doesn't make it good.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. I mean, like, I just, again, thinking of recent news, like even with abortion, like there was a statement from, I want to say it was Alito's statement, maybe.
Alito, okay, we need to do this. Go ahead and let's do the statement first.
Saying that like taking away abortion denies a national like surplus of babies for people to adopt, and I'm like, that's very fascist to me. The idea of like we as a nation need bodies,
Yeah,
it was gross.
I heard about that. Okay, so that's natalism, right? That's saying we need more babies.
More American babies is good.
Yeah, and that's an extreme form of natalism to say, like, the government has an interest in, like, making people produce children.
I mean, they do, though, is the thing. They want, like, little wage slaves. Like,
I mean, I know it's not, it's not extreme, like, bad to point it out. I know that they want that, but, like,
it's extreme to say that you want that out loud.
Yeah, and for the government to pursue it, that's bad. That was also an element in fascist Italy.
Did they like ban birth control or something?
I'm not sure they banned birth control, probably, because they did have a close, it's called the Lateran Treaty, a close alliance with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Basically, Mussolini was not a religious person, but he made an alliance there, kind of an alliance of convenience, but this is also part of his broader, like, embrace of the right. It's like, these are the guys, they're helping me, and he's sort of fighting, kind of trying to be traditionalist and revolutionary at the same time.
Yeah.
Which you need some traditionalist elements. I mean, you got to have the Catholic Church as you're trying to radically restructure the society, but really do it in a very reactionary, pro-authority kind of way.
Which, I mean, makes sense, honestly, if you look at, like, especially, like, the Catholic Church, or very old church institutions. Like, they are very hierarchical, very patriarchal, like, all the shit that those fools like.
Yeah, and they don't have to.
They don't have to be at all, but...
such a thing as liberation theology.
Parts of that are ripe for the picking for them.
Yeah, and in particular, their central authority has been that way. So we were saying, though, Mussolini was very natalist.
Yeah.
So they had, like, the government giving stipends and stuff to people to have more children. And just like the idea was the larger a population in a nation, the better able they are to expand and to conquer other places.
Wow. Yeah. What was your point about Scalia? Did you have another one, or was that it?
Oh, not Scalia. He's dead. But Alito.
I mixed those up.
I thought it would be interesting to try to rank the Supreme Court justices which one's the most fascist to least fascist.
I don't know enough about them, bro.
Fair enough. All right. One for another audience.
Yeah, sorry. I like to pretend they don't exist.
That's true. They are the Supreme Court, so
they're
pretty bad in the first place. That should be abolished, right? Like that's the weakest left position you can have is abolish the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Like, why the fuck do we have that, guys? Come on. Just a bunch of... If anything, like, the weakest would be like, can we get rid of the fucking for life posting? That's insane. What are they, kings?
Yeah.
Why do we have 9 kings in charge?
So that one's bad. I think it's fine. Honestly, it would be fine to have, like, a Supreme Court. The real problem is that, like, our... the Senate, I guess, but... our Congress is deliberately built to frustrate any attempts by people to radically change things. Yeah. When you think about it, you could just change the laws, change the Constitution or whatever, and do things. Whenever the Supreme Court says, hey, you can't currently do that, you could just change the rules.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you have both, if you have both an obstructionist Supreme Court and an obstructionist Congress, sorry.
All right. Would you rather get rid of the Senate or get rid of the Supreme Court?
Senate.
I would say Senate as well.
Yeah. Because without that, you could more easily...
You could just ratify, or you could just amend the Constitution. And just be like, hey, we don't have a Supreme Court anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, you could do that. You could...
We got rid of the president, too. We don't need that.
Well, they could also just be there and, like, kind of basically be advisors, right? And they're like, oh, we struck down this law. And you can be like, okay, well, amendment. Now we can do that. They're just a reminder to change the rule book at that point.
Like, oh, yeah, we do need to update that. Thank you.
Yeah. But that would... I think that's sort of an interesting prelude, maybe, to our upcoming episode on democracy.
Yeah.
Is like, that could get out of hand if people start liking some bad shit.
That's true. Very true.
And then the Supreme Court, I mean, because think about it. The Supreme Court in the Warren Court was out there saying, hey, actually, you can't do school segregation.
Stop being racist.
Yeah, like they were doing these things, and everybody was like, what? So...
Could be bad.
Complicated. But generally, they suck.
Yeah. I'm very comfortable with that statement. You quote me. Okay, so you hinted at this earlier of some of these fascist projects will sometimes, either from their origins or like they'll throw it in to appease people, do some vaguely socialist projects in terms of like, yeah, we'll feed you, but only if you're like the right kind of people. Mm-hmm. How has that worked? Has it worked? I mean, I'm going to say no, because if you're only feeding like the right kind of people, you're not doing a good job.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the long and the short of it is it's not interested in really not providing for people, because it somewhat is. I mean, they do want to keep people alive to go work for them.
I was going to say, it's like with caveats of like, yeah, we're keeping you alive so you can like go be in our army and die that way.
Yeah, it's not interested. I think the key we should focus on is it's not interested in liberating people.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
So whether you're anarchist or communist, socialist, wherever you're fitting, that's your goal, is to liberate people from the shackles of capitalism, from the shackles of the state as it's currently built, and we can all agree on that, and giving them complete freedom, anarchist style, or complete freedom of association and all that, giving them freedom to have like a mass participatory democracy, like in like a socialist worker state or something. That's what you're trying to do. You're not trying to, say, hey, give me the power, the big, strong, only I can fix it. I'll feed you the scraps. That's not what you want,
Yeah.
And that's what the fascists are about.
What then is their relationship with, I guess, capitalism? Because you said that they don't mind it. Mm-hmm. That's confusing to me. Like, why wouldn't like the Nazis take over every factory and be like, well, these are all Nazi factories now? They
do for a lot of them, but they, in key industries and things, they would do that. They would take over some of them. But a lot of times they just found it easier, and they found the capitalists compliant enough to just say, hey, you guys know how to work it. You've been working it. We'll come kill you if you don't do what we say. But keep churning them out.
Good luck. Okay. Okay, and then
it was also, just to add this in, it was also kind of symbiotic. So you get Mercedes-Benz to churn out your war machine because they know how to do that. But you are also helping them, like, you're paying them a lot of money for one, but not too much money because they're not like, going to rip the government off, or you're going to be mad at them, right? But you're also like providing security. You are their strike breakers. You're the government is always going to come in on the side of the employers. And yeah, sure, they're going to like try to head that off by giving enough to the workers. And this is where they kind of make their leftist claims. It's like, oh, but we have like national workers unions and stuff like that. And it's like, you do kind of appease them somewhat, give them a little bit, but you also will just come in there and break heads.
Yeah.
If you need it.
Okay. Because, like, something I've heard you say before is that fascism is capitalism with the mask off.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, yeah. So the reason I say this is sort of like, it's like, how do we get to fascism? So we've been talking about like the ideology of fascism, but how do you get from a country that's just a normal capitalist democratic state to fascism? And I think it's when capitalism is backed up against the wall. The capitalists fear for their existence.
That's what happened in Italy, yeah.
They are worried about will there be this red tide that comes and takes our heads off? And it's the same thing in Germany. In Germany, you had a rising communist party. You had a socialist party as well. You had the Nazis, and these guys were the same thing. They were fighting in the streets. Yeah. And the government in power was afraid. They were afraid of losing their tenuous hold, the old Weimar Republic. They were afraid that the fascists would tear things up, although some people were afraid of that. They were afraid, what would the Reds do, right? They're going to come in here, Bolshevize the place. They're going to come in here and have our heads on sticks. And so they turn to what they think is just their like attack dog. Yeah. This is going to protect me from the barbarians at the gates. And then, we'll be safe. We can manage them. They thought they could manage, the Italian fascists, the Nazis, the government in power thought we'll be able to handle it.
It's small enough. It's not a big deal. We can do it.
Yeah. Even the king making Mussolini prime minister, that was of a minority government. He thought that was going to be fine. What are these fascists going to do? Yeah. And the answer is they're always going to take over. Right. But it's the same thing in any case. Is when capitalism feels threatened enough, we've said it before, right? It's going to do whatever it needs to do.
Oh, for sure.
And they'll use those tools at their disposal. We don't really see it that much, I don't think, in America. Like really actually strong national fascist organizations.
Yeah, they're very splintered.
You have them. I mean, you got neo-Nazis, you got neo-fascists and stuff, the Proud Boys and everything, they're out there. Fuck them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, if we have a listener who is in that organization.
I don't know how you found us.
Yeah, strange, but
leave. Leave. I don't want you.
They're small, right?
Yeah.
If they were a major force, if you had in all 50 states or most of the states or whatever, chapters of these organizations with,
that were agitating and starting shit in the streets and all that.
Yeah. If you had them 100,000 strong and, in all the states, I guess you'd need millions of this is a big country. Yeah. But if you coupled that with like a rising leftist tide for some reason, they felt threatened, they would absolutely turn to those fascists to protect them. I mean, they see them on the same side. We mentioned, Hitler gets to be all nice and cozy in his jail cell writing his book. Like who gets to do that in prison, right? Or the government, they don't come in and try to stop Mussolini and his thugs from beating people's heads in. They just give them the government. Yeah. Why don't they intervene against these guys? Is because they intuit, they realize they're on the same side.
Yeah.
They're ultimately defending the same thing. Power.
Yeah.
The few versus the many.
Okay, even though we are like far from, national fascist chapters everywhere, that kind of thing, it still feels like a lot of the traits are around. Like, I feel like I could walk up to almost any average American and say at least one of those things and to be like, yeah. Like, I could just be like, America's the best country. And if I think a lot of people will be like, yeah.
I would say that if you're talking about conservatives, American conservatives, they have several fascistic elements. One of them is the hypernationalism. I think that by and large, unless you're talking about like the seven, old school Republicans that are still centrists or whatever, all 8 of them or 7 of them, however many
They don't
there
exist.
are.
They don't exist.
But the mythical moderate Republican, outside of those guys, everyone's pretty much super nationalist.
Yeah.
And they think America should be able to outright, defend its interests.
/ go fuck things up.
Yeah. Most of them won't say, though, that we're going to, like, straight conquer something.
If the end result is we took over a place, isn't that the same thing, then?
Yeah, I think that they more see it as, like, go, beat up a country. But they don't, most of them don't really want to, like, add territory.
No.
That's what I'm saying?
No, but you're still, like, exploiting our country. You're still,
they want to do
doing war. They're really into war.
They want to do war, like, aggressive wars to expand imperialism, I would say. Mm-hmm. So we're just, that's
imperialism by another name.
Well, yeah, so we're talking about, like, neoliberalism or like, just economic imperialism.
Yeah.
That, I would very much say, like, maybe the modern
fascist
version. Yeah. Modern fascism has moved more beyond...
let's put our flag here and
geographic.
Let's take their resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now it's just let's send in our companies to hyper exploit them, and let's back that up with guns.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay. I would say that.
So yeah, I guess that was my thought. Like hearing that list a couple times now, it's like there's a lot of it out there. I'm not saying that like maybe it's not the same terms, maybe it's not the same. Like some people aren't there saying like we are the fascist party, but I'm saying there's a lot of it in the air.
So what would you say, or how could we identify then what's fascist enough? Like,
what's the line?
Because we were talking about there's all these elements and you can have some of them, but is it like a checklist of like, if you have 5 or more, then you're a fascist, and then which one of those, like we just said, with imperialism or with taking over stuff versus just dominating, which ones need updating? Like modern day, they're not going to go out there and say,
let's go conquer.
Yeah, or let's go wipe out this race or whatever. But if they're doing something that is actively, racially genocidal in terms of like, let's say, mass incarceration.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like that is still there. Or just the coded language of race too is absolutely, it's very rare. I mean, not rare, unfortunately, because we live in the South, but but it's fairly rare to meet someone who just like straight up says like white people are better. It is coded racism, and they know how to like twist it so it sounds quote unquote reasonable.
Yeah.
Same thing with like oppressing just marginalized groups in general. They'll make all these like, even I was reading this on Twitter, even the term gender critical makes it sound like you have unique critiques to say and like it's a thought process.
What does that mean?
Oh, it's TERFs. Don't worry, it's just TERFs.
TERFs. Oh, so people who are saying like
people
gender
gender essentialist is another term, which I think is a little more accurate. But the kind of people are like, well, we can't let trans people in sports. We can't, the people who are.
Oh, so critical, like gender is critical, like it's important.
So the full term is, I think the full term is gender critical theorist, maybe GRT.
Oh, they tried to get some CRT action. Okay.
Or maybe it's just gender critical, but it's even the idea of putting that on the pedestal of like, academic thought of like, I'm just asking questions.
Yeah.
Like, it's really disingenuous, It's like, okay, your thoughts all suck and are terrible.
I think so. Some of you may be frustrated, like, okay, yeah, we get it. We don't need to draw a fine line about and hyper categorize everything. That's a good point. Is that all those gender critical people or whatever you want to call them suck, right? They have bad ideas. They could be changed, I guess. You could reform them in some way and get them to be good people again. But right now they're supporting shitty things. Even if they are a good person, they're supporting a shitty thing. Same with this fascist stuff. It's like you don't have to figure out specifically to what degree people are fascist. Like,
you don't have to check every box, but it's like, well, your ideas are bad.
Yeah, what you're advocating right now sucks. Like, it doesn't really matter specifically should I call you a fascist or not. Like, it's bad. All of it.
I think that's fair. Okay, so next question. Why is it that communists are always against fascists. Don't get me wrong. I'm very glad that we are. But what is behind that like essential conflict? Is it just like the class antagonism versus class cooperation? Is that the main crux, you think?
No, it's not so much just a disagreement on policy. Lots of people disagree with fascist policy.
But a lot of people just fucking roll over it and take it.
Well, yeah, but a lot of people don't perceive themselves as being the main enemy of fascists. So who's always fighting the racists? It's oppressed races, right? It's people of color. Who's always fighting the sexists? It's oppressed genders, right? Or who's always fighting imperialism? It's colonized people. Who's going to fight the fascists? It's the people who the fascists want to exterminate. You know,
Okay.
who are the barbarians at the gates from their perspective? It's us.
It's us.
You know,
We're the baddies.
and we take them at their word when they go out there and they say, "Hey, communism is coming to destroy us. We need to do whatever we can to fight the Bolshevik threat." Well, hey, we're the Bolshevik threat. Like,
Okay.
We're always going to be like, well, fuck these guys because they call us their enemies, you know?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Like I get that from a historical perspective because like those were two rising ideas at the time. But like today, I think the definition of communism is so fucked in like the general public that they don't even know who they're aiming at. You know what I mean?
You mean the fascists would say...
Like neo-fascists, they think everything's communist. And you're like, that's cute. That's
Yeah.
a fucking Democrat.
yeah. Commandante Joe Biden. You
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
Yeah. If we had the fantasy version of...
Comrade Bernie Sanders
yeah.
is openly communist. That'd be insane.
As if the Democratic Party were what they imagine it to be, it'd be beautiful.
That'd be rad.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of it is that we perceive that they're the enemy. We also just communists can clearly see that these guys are, terrible. Like
Yeah,
these
I
guys
mean,
are
list the traits again. We're against all those things.
Yeah, like it's fundamentally opposed to us. Like, and you can get into arguments, like we said, in terms of methods and whatever. Okay, some
communists are authoritarian, some communists. I'm trying to think of like the list again. Hopefully your communists aren't like sexist and oppressing people, but it has happened.
You have individual instances of it, but as an ideology, you don't.
You can have nationalist communists.
Yeah,
For sure.
That is in a different context, in the context of national liberation versus
Exactly, yeah.
versus conquering territory.
That's not really their bag.
Yeah, so
Degrees.
but they're diametrically opposed to us. It's
they want
Jedi and Sith.
There are good guys and bad guys in this one.
Yeah, and again, it is just people doing good and bad things, or supporting good and bad things, or whatever. But there's a right side and a wrong side. From our perspective, their perspective is the complete opposite,
right,
and it's wrong. But like, it's a matter of belief, I guess. Like, that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, that is interesting. Like, they have to think they're right on some level.
They do. I mean, a few of them probably are like, no, I'm just doing this 'cause
I'm
it's
very
bad.
evil. Yeah, nobody, I mean, it's a classic, like, Hitler didn't think he was evil thing, but, like, I think that requires, again, that inherent distrust and disbelief, not like they don't exist, but, like, a very negative view of people as a whole. Because to think that, like, oh, they need someone in charge, they're too stupid to do it themselves, that kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Oh, their kind of degrading way of looking at people?
Yeah. I think it requires that. It requires a lack of empathy and a very narcissistic personality, frankly.
Yeah.
Unless you're like a happy little worker part of the fascist machine. But if you're trying to be the next fascist dictator, I think you gotta be a little bit.
You really do. Yeah. I mean, because you are on the one hand saying, right,
everyone else is stupid.
well, not that. It's that, the world is this vast jungle and, it's just weird animals and it's just a brutal struggle for survival as Malatesta was describing.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the case, but here's what people say. That's what the fascists say. And they stop there, but they also say, but
I can fix it.
yeah, I alone can fix it. I'm the one. And Mussolini definitely had this kind of grandeur thing. Interestingly, employment-wise, he was an elementary school teacher.
Oh, gotta watch out for those.
Yeah, he's just a teacher.
Gotta give those guys guns.
The ignoble profession. Yeah. So, fellow teacher, fellow young socialist.
Damn.
Yeah, but he took his wrong turn, I think, before. I made it past the dangerous Mussolini.
Okay,
age,
good.
So.
You're free and clear.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about how to identify. We pulled up the Pokédex. We talked about why we're against it. But, like, how do you deal, I guess, with fascists? Like, what do you do? Maybe not to, like... Because, again, it's rare to meet someone who goes like, all right, I'm a fucking fascist. But how do you refute fascist arguments, maybe would be a better way to put it. Fascist tendencies.
Okay, yeah.
Because if you see a fascist, just punch them and move away, like we said.
Yeah. Out and out fascists, I think.
Just don't.
Yeah.
They shouldn't exist.
Tactically, okay, so, I mean, but in the short term, you do have to deal with openly... You have to deal with neo-fascist organizations, whether they're calling themselves that or not. You still have to, those exist.
Those do exist, okay.
And, one thing I think that has a limited effectiveness, but somewhat effective, is just kind of, using and passing, as weak as they are, laws and stuff. Like, even working with liberals, are pretty stupid in a lot of ways. Like, they don't, we don't support them. But
we'll use them.
Yeah, they have enough sense to see, like, literal fascism is bad most of the time. And in terms of, like, the very, very bad parts that, like, hate speech or inciting violence, liberals can be prodded into doing something about, right? And you can at least take the very, the most barbaric edges off of these fascist groups. Not of the groups, but, like, their ability to do things. You can, box them up a little bit.
Yeah, make it harder for them to, like, openly collaborate on the internet and shit like that.
Yeah, and I think that would be fine. It's not enough, obviously.
It's also not great because, I mean, that definitely gets used on us, too.
Yeah, that's the downside is you don't... And it's... So, an annoying thing about liberals is they kind of hang up on free speech or whatever. So they might not can be used in that sense, but that does kind of help protect us against going too far, trying to get these fascists, and like you said, getting it turned on us.
Yeah.
So, because that's the thing with a lot of things. The HUAC, its predecessor or whatever, its origins was going after pro-Nazi activity in World War II. So yeah, like they always turn that right on around and say, what about those commies?
Yeah, because I mean, what's fascinating about that is, there is that constant, what people see as like a push and pull between free speech and being able to say whatever the fuck you want, I guess. I mean, but those are on internet platforms that are privately owned. So like there are rules, I think that's really interesting when we decide to get pissy about free speech. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess then you end up in the sad state of like, bringing your human sacrifice to appease the high priest, Zuckerberg or whatever to come, please come save us.
No,
you don't really want to rely on them to. I mean, you want to nationalize that shit. You want to just
I mean, the internet should be a
short term nationalize it, long term just take it over by the people. But like that should be ours.
But if you want a more future society example, if the internet were run by the people, there would still be rules of conduct on it designed by the people to be like, hey, you can't like just say that. Yeah. That's not okay.
And be enforced by what? The worker state or by the people, the masses, the commune, right? And then you get into our hang-ups on democracy, which we'll have to get into. Is like what happens when those are bad. But in general, the masses are going to decide like, hey, were you an asshole on there? We're going to stop you from doing that.
Okay, no more accounts for you. You get your internet taken away.
Yeah, like that. There has to be something.
Has to.
But refuting more fascistic arguments or whatever. What context do we want? Like, is it a friend or is it like
it's tough.
Someone online? So someone online, it's like okay to make your points. Like, yeah, I feel like if you're really concerned with like the missionary work of saving souls or whatever, like I really want to reform this person. Okay, you'll have to take that kind of persuasive tact and all that.
Yeah,
and we've talked about that before in like talking to a liberal or talking to anti-communists, basically trying to help get them on your side or get them to stop hating you.
Yeah. And, again, only do that if you have the fucking energy and and the willingness to understand, like, you're probably shouting into a wall,
And it's not, I don't know, this is a little bit of a divide between, like, anarchists and Marxist-Leninists, at least, or Orthodox Marxists, is that anarchists, at least in the classical sense, say, like, essentially we do need to go convert everyone to anarchism, or convert lots of people to it.
Yeah.
Whereas communists basically say the class struggle will play out, we'll convince people through that, or they won't be convinced, So I kind of fall on that side, as like, your proselytizing is kind of, it's like useful, small scale, and it's useful to you, to your conscience, to say, like, I tried to do something for this person. Yeah. But it's probably not going to sway the whole thing. Like,
no.
Whereas the fascists are very narcissistic, I'm very not. Like, I don't think that I can really sway things that much. I'll try. We're trying. But I don't think that it really is going to be the determining factor.
Yeah. I think, in an internet context, it's honestly, most likely not going to work, because people, it's been talked about a lot. They get this fucking bravado when they're anonymous that they say shit like, I have been told to get sterilized on the Washington Post comment section.
Wow.
So people say some shit.
Yeah.
And there's, no reasoning with those kinds of people. There's not a lot you can do. If you want to try to engage, you absolutely can, but like, it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of like willingness to drop it if it gets like kind of scary or whatever. Like, you gotta be smart about it, is what I would say.
And one kind of alternative tactic, kind of the dark side tactic, is understanding that most times when people come to a debate, they have their position, they hear out the debate, and they end up with stronger in their position, right? They just like...
this confirms what I wanted to believe.
Yeah, it hypes them up.
Yeah.
So you can just go in knowing you're just going to pump up the troops, right? So go in, make the coolest pro-communist arguments you can, and just play to the crowd and play to your own side and be like, hey, we're communists, we're dope, we're cool, like, do that. Understand that you're not going to convince this person. You're really just like hyping up your own side. Do that. We need
fuck it. I'll like
propaganda. Honestly,
I'll support you.
Yeah.
So in person, I think it depends on the degree, Like, if they're saying some really fucked up stuff, like, again, you got to consider safety, and you got to be like, all right, I need to disengage this person. It's not a great move for me right now. But if they just say something like, let's give the example earlier, like, America's the best country, you can be like, all right, why? Like we've talked about with our liberal episode, like, ask questions, be engaged, try to draw out where these thoughts come from and see like what kind of sources they're working with, because a lot of people are working with like my 5th grade history class,
Yeah.
So I think kind of the same sort of rules apply. What do you think?
I would agree. Yeah. I don't think, for the most part, that people ever feel themselves to be in a deficit of facts. So sources, to me,
maybe not.
Yeah, more gets people on the defensive, or makes them think that you think that they're stupid or whatever. But yeah, I think you're right to say, like, ask questions, and not so much focus on just asking questions, but getting them to ask questions, like, of their own. Where did I come up with that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Getting them to kind of question that, because that's a big part of it. Fascism sort of relies on an obedience, on just a
questioning. Yeah. And I think again, not to point fingers, but this does sound a lot like converting liberal episode, but take from that what you will. The goal doesn't have to necessarily be to fully convert, one conversation they're a communist. Like, that's very unlikely unless you have a very wishy-washy friend.
Yeah, someone else is going to talk to them next week.
The next person they run into, they're like, all right, cool. But it's more to question their belief system, or at least get them to like bump up against some things that you're like, that is kind of uncomfortable, so that the next time an issue comes up, maybe they'll like think about it more critically. Yeah. So. And
really, like, it's a frustrating part of the conversation to be in whenever you're kind of trying to point out, like, hey, so, but this has bigger implications than what you're saying. Like, this, ends up kind of racially determinate sort of thing. Or like you're trying to point that out as nicely as you can or whatever. It's very frustrating because a lot of times they'll be like, well, no. Like I'm not trying to say anything racist. I don't believe in that or whatever. But just like getting them to say that in association with that belief, I think makes them like kind of does fire off a neuron that's like, oh, that belief is associated with people saying it's racist, and that kind of like, I don't know.
That's not a good look.
Get a good person that will bother them. That will be like, why? Like, why is that associated with, and that kind of like plants a questioning, an uncertainty. And again, some people cannot be shaken. Some people don't have enough uncertainty. And they're like, I don't know. I'm a very uncertain person, so I see it as a good thing. But like, you're not going to convert someone if they have so much certainty in them, and you just can't do it. You just can't. It won't.
Yeah.
It won't happen. But if they do have it, then that may bear fruit later.
It's a long game. It's a very long game.
And that's the thing I think you said, only do this if you have the energy. Only do it if you have the energy, if it matters to you, if this person changes or not.
If you interact with this person on a regular basis, like that would probably be worth the investment,
Yeah, and it's how good of a person are you? Like, I got to be honest, like even though, probably the best, the most saintly path would be to try to do this to everyone you encounter.
Hello.
Right? There's Jesus in everyone or whatever, like sure, okay. But I'm probably only going to actually do this to people that are in my immediate circle, people who I have a vested interest in trying to like see that they, aren't doing bad things in their life.
But also like that makes sense. Like you're more likely to listen to a friend than a fucking stranger,
Yeah. There you go. Tips,
we did it.
Tips on.
We defeated fascism.
But how to defeat fascism, big picture. Is to
do communism.
Yes, it's essentially organize, right?
Yeah.
Build the structures you need to defeat capitalism.
Yeah. Use liberals with caution.
Yeah,
They're
definitely
gonna fucking turn on you.
Well, because eventually you're going to turn on them one way or the other, right?
One of us is going to fuck over the other one. It's fine. This is a friends with benefits and then unbenefits situation. Frenemy. That's probably the better word for it.
And they also hate you at the same time.
It's fine.
You got to understand that if you're working with liberals, they do not like. If you are known to them as a socialist or communist or an anarchist, they also hate you. They're using you.
Yeah, for sure. They're counting on you to show up and look and vote.
Yeah, never get it twisted with those guys. Can
I tell you a really gross just vote story I saw on Twitter?
Yeah.
So I read this tweet about like a woman who was a mom in the Uvalde shooting, and it was like this whole thing like, oh, she was like an illegal immigrant and she got arrested for showing up there, but she like busted out and went and knew where her daughter's classroom was and like saved her. And then like I was like looking at the comments because I'm a diseased person.
It's like Chernobyl to me.
I do it all the time. It's horrible.
Wow.
I finally stopped looking at my own comments one thing because I can't.
Yeah.
In big enough circles, it's just not a good call. But yeah, a few posts or a few comments down, there was, of course, in a Ukrainian flag color with a sunflower, said, I bet this woman votes correctly, too.
Ooh.
I was like, well, did you see the part where she's an illegal immigrant? I don't think she can vote.
She cannot vote. Yeah, wow. Liberals.
Yeah. You take a story about literally saving your daughter's life from a gunman and go to and say, also she votes.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
Votes for people who won't do anything about this.
For real.
It was fascism, so it was always going to end in a downer.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
But we definitely did our traditional coda.
Patented sad ending. Okay. Anything else?
No. That was a lot.
No. Just no.
No, nothing
No
else.
more questions.
That's
Questions
it.
are closed. Okay, great. What are we doing next week?
Next week, we're going to do a discussion about democracy.
All right, we've been dancing around this one for a while.
Yeah, I feel like it comes up at the edges all the time.
It's the World War I of ideology.
World War I has got to be like the biggest. I mean, World War II was also consequential, but I mean, World War I really kicked shit into gear.
Everything pop off.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
It was. I bet a lot of time travelers go back to World War One to make it happen. I don't know.
But then they end up just making it more impactful.
Yeah, no. So like some of them go to like try to change it, but then other ones are constantly going to like put it back because it makes it worse in some way.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Half of the people who died in World War One were just time travelers trying to fix it or change it in some way.
That's very good.
That's my headcanon.
I like it.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about democracy and like...
Is it good?
Yeah, to what... So I'm going to say that I'm pro-democracy.
I am going to say that now, but what if I change my mind next week?
I'm pro-mass democracy. I'm pro...
There's a certain
everybody.
kind.
Yeah, like direct participatory democracy, that sort of thing.
Yes.
That's my opening stance. I'm going to be reading on it some more to like sharpen it and figure out. And then we're both going to come at this. It's not like a report on any side. We're both going to come at this kind of with questions, discussion sort of about what do we do with democracy?
Yeah, how do we do this thing?
What are its... I feel like we're not going to say, is it good? But like, what are its pros and cons or like pitfalls? How to avoid them? What kind of good society can we build? And how democratic will that look, I guess?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right.
Great. Let's finish this bottle of wine that I brought.
Hell yeah. We might cart some Oreos or something.
Oh, yes, please.
All right. See you guys later.
All right. Bye. Hey there, comrades. Just jumping in to remind you of all of our social media. We are on Twitter at teachcommunism, Instagram at teachmecommunism. You can shoot us an email. That's teachmecommunism@gmail.com. Any of those places are good to send us an episode suggestion or a question, anything you think would be useful feedback for us, or just your admiration. If you want to admire us in a public manner, and you should, you can go to Apple Podcasts to give us a review. It is the best way to help people find the show. Love when people rate and review us. Please do both. We are also on YouTube, if that's how you prefer to listen to podcasts, or if you know someone that's the only way they'll listen to podcasts, send them to our page. And we have a Patreon. For $5 a month, you get access to our notes for each week's episode, including the backlog of notes, which is a very handy resource for up-and-coming commies. And at the end of the year, all of the funds from Patreon will be given to local mutual aid in the DFW area. So, ain't going to line our pockets. Finally, we have merch. Check us out at TeePublic. You can find shirts and I believe also stickers and magnets and all kinds of fun stuff with catchphrases from the show or episode art, stuff like that. The link to that store is in the show notes, so check that out. Okay, that's all the internet. Join us next time for another episode of Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session. Bye, y'all.